I assume that means go. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pitfall Paranormal. I am your one-third host, Matt, aka Mutz.
I am McSkippy454, and I just want everyone to know that I am going to be drinking for tonight.
He's got the
Oh,
KBS.
you got the KBS
Oh,
going.
I got that KBS, baby.
Walmart or Meyer is selling CBS tomorrow in stores.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm going to try to get, I don't think I'm going to be able to get one from Meyer, but I'm going to get one from my guys.
Well, me not being able to drink, I am unfortunately stuck drinking cream soda.
I'm Josh, or Tomato Squeezer, the third host for this wonderful new show.
New and going through his growing pains awkward phase.
Yep, we're adding to the channel. We're going to resume the regular talk show on Sundays here very soon, but on Thursdays, we're going to get spooky. And I'm going to get yelled at by my dog.
You might hear a cat in the background,
So
too.
I'm going to quiet him real fast. Why don't you introduce the premise of the show?
All right. So once a week, we are going to, well, I'm not going to commit to once a week, but Thursdays, when available for right now, we're going to choose a topic of paranormal or really weird and unexplained and do our best to explain it. We'll walk you guys through some background information. We'll kind of talk on a few points, share a few stories, and then give our opinions at the end. And today's topic, we are talking about Pere Cheney, Michigan.
Now, is it Pere Cheney, or Pere Cheney?
It's Pere Cheney.
I was going to say, I thought it was Pere Cheney.
Pere Cheney. The Pere comes from the French word for father, and Cheney is the founder's last name. So literally, the guy named the town Father Cheney after himself. Not weird at all.
I just realized where this place is. That's like maybe a
Yep.
45-minute drive from where I hunt.
Go.
Oh, there you go.
Dude, I might have to go this weekend. I got time
As
to
long
kill
as-
Saturday.
As long as your vehicle's a little off-road because it's on the...
Definitely hard to get to. It's out in the middle
it's
of nowhere.
hard to get to, but...
For those not in the know, it's just a few miles south of Greeley. In fact, as we'll talk about later on, a lot of the residents that used to live in Pere Cheney evacuated the Grayling. So, with that, I think we can start giving some background.
After you, sir.
All right.
Take it away.
All right. So, Pere Cheney was originally founded in 1874. Was first established by George M. Cheney, hence the name, as I said before, hence the name. Basically, George M. Cheney got a land grant from the, let's see here, the main railroad company, Michigan Central Railroad. They gave him a land grant to set up a stop on the railroad, and with that, he established a general store. There's at the peak, the town had a general store, so a bunch of sawmills, carpenter, doctor, hotel, post office, you name it. An estimated about 15,000 people. And the
15,000 or 1,500?
1,500, my bad. And the main output for this town was logging, as is a lot of the area at the time. So actually it was a pretty popular stop, according to a lot of what I've been able to research. Is it was a pretty popular stop, and that's what kind of got its population and all that stuff. Eventually, though, like all good things, it must come to an end. Getting into the 1890s, there was an outbreak of diphtheria. So, for those who don't know, diphtheria is I'm just going to read directly from the CDC. Diphtheria is an infection caused by the bacteria Corynebacterium. I'm going to screw this up. Diphtheriae. Diphtheria causes a thick covering in the back of the throat. It can lead to difficulty breathing, heart failure, paralysis, and even death. Funnily enough, what stopped this is pretty common back in ye olden time. What eventually stopped all of this outbreak, because it wasn't exclusive to Pere Cheney, it was all over the United States, was actually vaccines. So you can thank that vaccines for why you don't have to worry about getting diphtheria
It
and
sounds
having your
like
child die.
a very aggressive like strep throat almost.
That's what
Yeah,
it seems
that's
like.
what it sounds like. It sounds like it's like strep throat, but it coats the back of your throat, and after that, you're done.
Most importantly, it sounds like some old school Black Plague shit that we've moved on from.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's. I don't know how if it's even a disease that exists in modern day, but probably like most other things that came from bad water sources or poor hygiene, like it is back in
yep,
the
and that's
1800s.
exactly why this spread.
Well, and you have to
Because-
imagine in a lumber town as well, they're probably getting a lot of that sawdust and stuff built up in their back, like from breathing that in, and then like probably bad water, because for sure like they were drinking like groundwater, so well water essentially. So I'm sure like all the bacteria that was in that wasn't really filtered, plus all the sawdust, probably didn't make a good combination.
Not really. In fact, we'll come back to the sawdust because that does play a part into the other disasters that struck Pere Cheney. So and as was said earlier, they didn't have access to any water. So because of the poor hygiene, poor water supply, this diphtheria spread like a plague. So that led to a very severe population decrease. And then a few years later, after they kind of got it contained, it broke out again a second time. This time reduced the population to about 25. And so this is by 1901, their population was down to about 25. And by 1917, the residents were down to about 18. And the land was just auctioned off as a public auction. And Pere Cheney was considered a ghost town.
Yeah, they got rid of all the railroad stops there and basically just abandoned it.
What's
Yep.
great is that the
'Cause
people of this
what are you
town
gonna do with
basically
18?
upped and moved and made Grayling just about. Like Grayling's a great town that's like
Well-
not booming, but it's like one of the
Well,
more
Grayling
populous
was
north.
established. They just
Grayling was already established, right? They just Grayling was doing a lot better because they had actually had water and, were in a logging camp in the middle of the woods.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like the remaining people are just kind of like, oh, let's just go to Grayling, have fun, rot that mess of whatever they had
Well, it
going on
was-
there.
Right.
it was Grayling, and there was another close by city too, but I can't remember which
It's
one
to
it
the
was.
south. I can't remember either, but it's in that area. So why are we talking about Pere Cheney? It seems like it's a small old town. However, according to a lot of local residents, and apparently you can ask around in Grayling and you'll get the same response, there's a that apparently haunts the cemetery there, which is the only thing left besides a few holes in the ground that may or
Foundation
may
of
not be
old buildings.
foundation. There used to be foundation buildings back in the 70s. However, recently it's been so reclaimed by nature. You're not going to see anything but the graveyard. So it's hard to tell where the township was or anything like that.
I do want to add like that, like a lot of the reports are. I know you're probably going to dive into it, but like there's only one type of vegetation that even grows in this city anymore, and it's like a moss. So
Right.
like that adds a lot to the creepy factor of it. Like nothing else grows, just this strange moss, has
strange
overtaken
moss.
the whole what used to be town.
And that ties into the whole witch story of, oh, it's the witch doing. So there apparently was a woman who was considered a witch, but according to most sources, it wasn't a witch in the case of, sitting around a cauldron, cackling evilly, casting spells, and general Halloween witchy bullshit. It was basically a woman who unfortunately had a child wedlock and was ousted from the community and forced to live in the woods. And they're saying because of the situation, she turned into the witch of casting spells and doing general spookiness. And that's how the plagues of diphtheria started. And so from that little ghost story, we get a lot of encounters and a lot of people saying they've seen some pretty spooky stuff around Pere Cheney, especially at night.
Well, I think another thing that might play into the haunted factor of it is the fact that, as you know, because there was other diseases that were taking the town over, people like residential towns were like, keep your shit to yourself, and we're trying to burn the town down to stop the
Right.
disease from spreading. So like, I could see something like that being a thing. Is like they're like, something's not right here. We don't want these guys to live and spread to us, so let's burn it. And I'm sure in one of these burnings, maybe like this witch was involved, and that's why she haunts it and stuff like that.
So apparently, one of the things that happened to this witch supposedly is that she was hanging from an oak in the middle of the graveyard, and I mean the burnings were definitely related. Were definitely related to the diphtheria outbreak, and there's not confirmed reports that residents of Grayling went and started burning houses down, but pretty much everybody thinks residents of Grayling were like, nah, we're not having this, and burnt the what's existed Pere Cheney to the ground. However, yeah, so we had the witch who was basically hanged in the middle of the grave, and her grave supposedly is there. Apparently, it's been tore up a lot, and I really can't speak to the current status of it, but apparently it was there's one grave that everybody thinks is the witch's. It has this really thick glass that surrounds it, and with ashes in the middle of it. So that it seems to be the target for vandals as well as people trying to take souvenirs from the grave. Don't know why you would do that.
I was gonna say, isn't
Personally.
there a story about a guy? Now he's a police officer now, but he was a kid when he did it. Dug up a grave and took a skull out. Is this that same place?
Right.
Yeah, and it's
So
like he
there's
rode around with it in the back of his cop car, which is a
Mm-hmm.
big no-no.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, if you want things to follow you home, that is a guaranteed way to do it right there.
Desecrating
Personally-
remains and keeping them with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yep.
I'm a police officer now. This goes in the back of my car.
Right. I have not been able to track that. I've heard that story. I see it reported. I've not been able to verify if that's actually true or not.
Well, there's not really a lot of documentation of any of this. Most of it's just
Really?
hearsay or passed down by
Right.
generations type stuff.
This is purely all just speculation. There's the only thing that we really have is the facts I stated earlier. Pere Cheney was a town. Got the double whammy of diphtheria, and got abandoned. And that was a ghost town. So they're actually the township. Let's see. The Beaver Creek Township is actually currently making plans as of 2050 to go in there and bring the gravesite back to its former glory.
That sounds like a big
Yeah.
old bag of nope.
Well, they want to go through what records that they have and restore gravestones and basically rebuild it to make it, I don't know, a historical graveyard, I would
Pretty
guess.
cool, you know.
I
I guess if I was running down on a trail in the middle of the woods, I guess if I'm gonna run across a graveyard, I guess I want the graveyard to look nice. Maybe.
Yeah,
there are a
I
lot
mean-
of old graveyards that don't get this treatment. I think the biggest reason they're going to see this treatment is because it is like one of the top like witch graves to visit, outside of like Bloody Mary in Indiana and
Right.
everything, especially in the Midwest. Like this is a top destination, and I don't know if maybe they're trying to discourage people from going there, or if they're going to like ramp up like, "Oh, come see the Pere Cheney
Right.
graves. They're so haunted." Like they're doing with the asylum over here right now.
Oh yeah. Eloise.
Yeah, Eloise is being
Eloise.
bored and stuff.
Yep.
A
But
friend of ours actually did the tour of it during the daytime, not during the nighttime. But
I see that the is it Detroit Paranormal? There's a group that's actually doing tours through it right now, but and they have they bring their equipment. You just kind of walk around and check it out at night.
yeah,
Personally, I
basically.
wouldn't, but
I'd rather do it alone than in a big group of 50 people or whatever they do.
Yeah, I do know that they highly recommend with Pere Cheney that you don't go there at night because of
absolutely.
the things that could happen. Plus, like the people, because there's so many people that come there, they do think
Right.
it attracts like obviously it's going to, but like track a not so pleasant crowd later.
Right.
Plus the story from about 2009.
Oh yes. Do you want to tell that story, Alex?
So there was a group of kids back during October 2009, group of teens. They gathered at the cemetery when a male in his 50s confronted them, had and brandished and fired his shotgun at them to kind of scare them off, which is weird. And from what I've gathered and what I know, unless you guys want to add on to something, like they don't know who the guy was, they couldn't find him.
I
I've
don't think
not
they
seen
ever
it.
identified him. No.
No, they have not.
Which also, from what I've gathered and read, is like kind of played more into like the spook appeal of it, like this random mysterious dude firing shotguns. Why is he
Right.
here? What is he doing? And we don't know who he is, and we can't find out who he is. So
And-
that adds to the appeal of like it's haunted. Some people are like, it was a haunted man there, protecting his grave.
And there's definitely evidence of them getting shot at. Now I can't confirm if the holes were already in the car, but there was definitely reports that there were shotguns.
Well, yeah, they filed a police report
Right.
and everything. But
There was evidence of shotgun damage to the vehicle.
wasn't
so-
there? Isn't there a guy that lives like just a couple miles outside the graveyard? I don't
There
know. If
definitely is. If you pull, I pulled it. I actually looked up on Google Maps because I'm too lazy to drive there. And there is actually some dude has a house about a few miles out. I think it's a few miles about northwest of Pere. Like there's definitely property there, and I was actually thinking about this when I was doing some research in this. It must suck to be that guy because you probably have kids going down your driveway thinking you're going to Pere Cheney, and suddenly you're at this guy's house.
But I mean, that wouldn't explain why he was there, unless like this is gonna be the question I asked, because I couldn't find anything on it because I know they sold the land. Like, who owns the land and what is like done with it? Is it just?
I think it's state owned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that'd be my next question. Because I know like what were we talking about not long ago in our Slack chat where like a lot of people go, but it's a state park now, like it's a hunting ground, and somebody also bought land that kind of interjects into it, and a lot of people go on his land and he has to scare people out of there, which adds to a lot of the mystery. But like that was going to be my question, is like, is this a guy that was literally like the guy who lives by it, and it's like people keep coming on my property, I want people to get out of here, so if I go over here and start shooting at people,
Just
obviously
tired of
not to
everyone's
shoot,
bullshit.
not shoot to kill, but like get out of here, like leave, let us like be in peace, like these are graves and stuff like that. Like maybe he had relative there or something. That's my question on it. Like I couldn't find anything in regards to that. I know there's like people that do live nearby, but I don't think any of them like own any part of the land, or if they have like a vested interest in the land. But why else would you do something like that? Unless you're a ghost.
I mean, unless you're a ghost, and if someone wants to explain to me the physics behind a ghost manifesting and brandishing a shotgun and firing a shotgun, doing damage
Shooting
to a
a
vehicle.
real shotgun.
I mean, just the amount of like, if you can confirm that guy's a ghost, that's like the biggest ghost discovery of
all time.
all time.
It's
Because
the witch in all of her conjuring. She built up so many years
Yep.
for one shot in 2009, and they just happened to come through. And he's like,
My
"All right,
favorite-
this is what you wanted me to do."
It reminds me of a meme of why are ghosts always like in the Victorian era clothing? I want a ghost from like early 2000s going, Britney, bitch. I want that ghost. So who's to say? they
Wearing a
can't be-
Kid Rock shirt.
Exactly.
That'd be the worst type of ghost. Stuck in the early 2000s.
Oh God,
Listening to
the
new
best
metal.
worst time of my life.
But yeah, like that's something I found interesting, because like they never found out who this guy was or what he was even
Right.
doing there. Like, was he there like grave robbing and didn't want people to see him? Nobody like,
Embodied.
yeah, nobody knows.
Why would
Nobody
you
knows.
grave rob a city that's been dead for over 100 years?
Well, you have to remember, like in some belief, like people back then, especially, like were buried with some of their more prized possessions, even.
Well, you got to think. I mean, they don't even have like all of the gravesite isn't even that big, and depending on, they don't have records of like absolutely how many people died, but it went from 1,500 to 25. Like, there's no way there's that many.
Well, if I remember reading correctly, they said that the graveyard only has like 50 or 60 people in
Yeah,
there.
it was like
because I think they burned most of the bodies for obvious reasons.
Yeah, not to spread the plague.
And that's definitely a valid point. I think the number I read was 90, but I mean, again, there's
so many
you get the
disputed
same-
reports on what's there.
you can get a general idea, but when you look too close, you get 10,000-foot view of what happened. But as soon as you kind of zoom in on the details, that's when you start getting all these branching details and all these different little leads that go at all these different places. But I think it's really interesting that you have a guy who's so dedicated to defending a graveyard that is in the middle of nowhere that requires dedication to get to. I mean, I can kind of feel for that guy.
Hasn't defended it since or any time before. So.
Right. So maybe he just didn't like those kids.
I mean, it's possible. That's why that's why I factor in the thoughts of like, was this guy like up to no good there and didn't want somebody to see what he was doing? Because you got to think also back then, like maybe they were buried with like gold rings, like authentic gold rings and stuff like that, and he wanted to get something, or maybe he had a family relative there that he knew about and wanted to go like investigate and maybe see if there was like a family heirloom, or if he was just a random drunk guy who wanted to hang out in a cemetery one night and a bunch of kids showed up and he didn't want them there, or he was hunting / poaching because it's a wildlife area. So I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Like I would like that time of the year you would be poaching with the shotgun, but maybe like that's what he was up to and just kind of wanted to get these kids out of here without really identifying himself too much.
Right. I mean,
there's just a lot of things that you can factor into that one incident. Like it's never happened since, and nobody like reported anything before. But then again, maybe nobody had the chance to report before because they were dead.
And just like the police officer with the skull in his back window. I mean, you hear it all the time, and it's comes up every single time you talk about Pere Cheney. But as soon as you try to get more details or find more repeat events, got nothing. Just that one.
Yeah, I was a kid messing around, dug up a grave. I found this skull. It looks pretty cool. Let's take it.
So, what kind of? I mean, supposedly the graveyard's haunted. None of us have been there. I would love to go.
So would I.
Again, it's not too far from where we stay up north. It's a good weekend trip.
It's still a 3-hour drive on a normal night, but
right. Plus, I have the vehicle for it. It's just, do I really want to risk it?
Matt does. I don't. I don't think you do either, Alex.
Why wouldn't I want to risk it?
Get that fucking journey going.
So what kind of supposed? I know we don't really have it in the notes here, but what kind of hauntings do we have going on?
Well, there's been like really reported like normal things, like there's some areas that are really hot, and there's other areas that are just really like condensed feeling air, and it's cold, and something just doesn't feel right, and you get those chills, and a lot of those things you can always factor into just like adrenaline and like a placebo effect upon yourself. But
plus, you're entering an area that's haunted,
right?
So you're gonna get that. Oh, it's haunted. I should feel something.
Yeah. I mean, and you're always going to hear noises. You're in the middle of the woods. There's wildlife, so you're going to hear cracks and creaks.
And I mean, like those are the other things. Like any of those noises, like if you were like really, like if I was out hunting, I'd hear those noises and be like, oh, that's just a squirrel breaking off a branch, or there's a bird flying away. But like when you're in an area like that and your senses are kind of like in a panic heightened state, like anything and everything is like, it's like when you're home alone and everything's dark and you gotta turn off that last light, and you're like, what's that noise? Like that's that kind of factor to it.
You're coming up from the basement and turn off the last light and run up the stairs.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I found that if I wrap myself in a blanket before I jump in the bed, I turn off the last light, run, that blanket protects me. All the demons.
It's
like a white sheet running through my apartment.
Like if you were running the NFL 40-yard dash, you would set the record running up those stairs.
It's like this episode of SpongeBob where he just goes to throw the trash out in the bin, and after the hash slinging
slasher.
Thank you, slasher.
Well, I mean, like the other thing that people think of, because it was a hot spot for a lot of like lumber people, because it was a lumber town, and that was like between like Jackson, Lansing, and this area and everything, going up towards Mackinac and all the things up north. Like it was a popular stop, and because like those people were coming in and out, so like there's a lot of talk of maybe like, you know, like those guys brought diseases through and stuff like that, and it was just the bad luck town. I through some of my very like not so great findings on it, like when you're searching up and down to like have stuff to talk about, there's like a belief that it's like it was like an Indian ground that they stole, or like there was the land was already tainted for whatever reason, and it was just bad luck and a curse upon the town, and that's why everything went the way it was. Or that maybe like they took this witch out real early in the time of it, and like she put a curse upon it and haunted and wrecked the town like that. But like nobody has like those answers. But for a fact, it was just a bad luck town.
I'm gonna tell you right now, and Josh is gonna nod his head because he's heard the same thing I did. The whole Indian burial ground thing, it's the entire country is an Indian burial ground. The Native Americans were
100%.
Were here living long before Europeans first made landfall in North America.
And you also have to think like most of Minnesota and Wisconsin and like even parts of the UP, Viking burial ground.
Right. So it's like to say that, oh, it's an Indian burial ground. I'm pretty sure
all of us are probably on an Indian burial ground.
Right. So
or just some sort of burial ground in general. Right. Because I mean, it wasn't just. I mean, so they get into the whole trope of Indians or Native Americans or Indian Americans. I don't know what the term is like a super spiritual type people, which is true, but so are Christians or any other sort of religion. So any ground's going to be a sacred type place, and if you fuck around on a gravesite, it's probably not a great idea. But
I mean, all the areas that I would, not to go on too much of a tangent here, but I'm pretty sure all the areas that you would have been a severe risk of pissing off Native American spirits, pretty sure the Native Americans have those walled off.
I mean, also like the state of Michigan in general was like a big Native American state and land and stuff like that. And then there's all the you know, the talks like when people came here, like the climate of the state, like the like all the trees and like the wetlands and stuff like that. There's a lot of things going on that some like early, you know, European travelers just didn't have good vibes about this land because of how it was, you know, formed and all that. But it goes back to is like what brought back down this town to be like so just bad luck Brian about it, basically.
Well, I can tell you that not having a stable water source definitely plays a big part.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let me drink out of this puddle that's been in the ground for 2 weeks.
Let me bury my dad right next to my well here. What would go wrong?
Also, I've been out cutting wood down all day, so all that is caught up in the back of my throat. Let's add this tainted water to my body.
As far as like actual like hauntings and things that I've heard go on, other than the supposed ghost train from the railroad that isn't there anymore.
Oh yeah, the ghost train. I forgot about that.
Yeah. There's supposedly a ghost train that you can hear going through town some nights. I guess it's one of the more rare things that happen. And then a lot of people just hear or see like children giggling and running around, basically.
Yeah, like the children that died when they were like sick and stuff like that. Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure diphtheria was like big amongst children, sort of like how they, you know, chicken pox is big.
Huge risk to children.
Yeah.
So I've heard that, and this comes credit of Astonishing Legends pod, that there are people who have parked their cars, went out to his graveyard, heard the laughter of children, came back, and found handprints of children all over their vehicles. Like there's like handprints on the back of the car, handprints on the mirrors, stuff like that. That's kind of spooky. Not gonna lie, if I heard a bunch of kids giggling in the forest, I'm not sure I'd stay.
I probably wouldn't either.
They're probably just having a good time, kicking around a ball, and
as long as they're laughing because
praying to Saint.
Yeah, just I mean, as long as they're laughing because they're poking your car, I'm fine. But they're laughing because it's tee that bullet's gonna fall on your head. I mean,
And even related to the children, like there's always the reports of like people walking around the town and they come back and there's like little handprints on their cars and stuff like
right?
that.
Kind of like what I was saying. Yeah. Yep. Um. There's also a lot of the stories I was honestly was able to find and came from the Astonishing Legends podcast because they did a really great job of going into detail. And if you're interested in this type of stuff, then I highly recommend you check them out. But another story going on the spooky factor is about how the vandals we were talking about earlier, a bunch of teenage kids, a band of them. There was a guy on the podcast that was basically um, went on a trip with a few friends out to the site, and obviously alcohol is involved. There's a few of them. Suddenly, somebody sees two red eyes staring at them from the woods, and that was it. Mass hysteria. People are crawling all over each other, trying to get in these trucks that they took out there and got the hell out. According to some of the guests that were there, those red eyes followed them all the way out. So
It was a
I could,
Sasquatch.
I mean, maybe
Which
maybe it was
is
those cougars that you
yeah, it's all the
It's
cougars up
all
in
the
northern
cougars.
Michigan that you talk
No,
about.
I'm not fucking touching that one right now. Not that's a different podcast, the Cougars of Michigan. It's just me ranting for an hour. Like that, the show will go off the rails at this point. But yeah, like that. That's like the stuff that you hear from time to time. They're like, these eyes were just watching and they followed us all the way out, and they were just moving seamlessly like with us. Like part of me always wonders like maybe like you had like a reflection bouncing off or something in your car, or if like yeah, you pissed something off and it was like making sure that you knew like you needed to leave.
Oh, right.
Don't
Now, if
come
only
back.
those red eyes could show up, maybe the red eyes, maybe it's a shotgun guy. Maybe he just didn't have enough energy to manifest himself, so all he could do is just do the eyes.
It's a specter.
Yeah. And then,
I
he
think
just been
technically
saving
he'd
up.
be a poltergeist. But...
See, perfect. Here's my theory for that. This guy, this shotgun entity has been saving up energy. Like he's got his little energy batteries. He's been saving up, saving up, saving up. And it just so happens those two kids that showed up there was a night that he hit 100%. It's like, you know what? I'm going all out. I'm draining this entire battery. I'm shooting at these kids. Bam.
Or what if it's a time traveling cop that knew something bad was going to happen, so
Oh
he
my
went and
God.
scared him off?
I mean, it's possible. Terminator style.
Exactly. Now
Point
that was
is,
a little less likely, but
I need to evict a cat. You're gonna have to give me a second. But
Yeah, that's fine. Like another thing that they talk about like in that kind of thing like plays into the strange figures parts of it, and then you have like the lights in the trees and the glowing orbs that are like the souls and spirits of people floating around.
I'm not a big orb guy.
Like as in
Yeah, I'm not a big orb guy
you don't
either.
buy into them.
No.
I've yet to see an orb photo that doesn't look like a giant ass dust particle.
Yeah, dust particle.
Yeah,
or a
100%. I
bug.
agree with that. I mean, like when you're trying to take pictures of some of these things, like that's where I think like not necessarily like I mean, yeah, like a frequency almost like we just don't have the proper technology to capture them correctly because like you always see those photos they're like, oh, look at that big orb right there, man, they're so like no, like that sometimes it's just dust and the way the light's hitting something. But I mean, like if you're out and you physically can like see the orb, like you obviously know in your own eyes with what you're seeing, it isn't like you're not going to see that dust particle flying around.
Right, now.
Right.
But
Now,
but in photos, like you're definitely going to see stuff, and you like that's where I'm always at with a lot of these ghost hunting things. Like my mom and them like do all these ghost hunting trips and stuff like that, and it's like it's easy to explain. You're paying somebody a lot of money for something like this. They're going to make it sound and be what you want it to be, so you can tell everybody and get more people to come back. Like if something so monetized doesn't get to me. That's why I like these kinds of stories better, or these kinds of things where like nobody's like running it. Like if you just happen across it, like you can't explain what's happening.
right. I mean, I think as far as dust particles go, I'm pretty sure if dust particles kind of arrange themselves into a face, that would be more believable than orb. Or maybe I get a bunch of orbs that has like a face.
Yeah, and in the moment when you're watching something form a face, you're not thinking, "Oh my god, I gotta take a picture of this."
So you're
No,
thinking,
it's let me
oh
get
my
the
God, it's
fuck
a
out of
face.
here.
I'm gone. Bye. See ya.
Yeah.
'Cause,
At that point, you're in fight or flight, and I'm pretty sure you can't just punch a ghost
I
in
mean,
the
you can
face.
try. I
Yeah,
wonder
you
if
could
someone's
try.
ever punched a ghost dust particle before.
Back up. Crazy old man.
But
the that kind of plays into like what I was gonna say is like with those old school photos and like those still photography, but like way technology is evolving. Oh, we just got a follow. Thank you, Pajama the Hut. But the way that the technology's flowing, like with these GoPros and all these things that we have available to us, like you think you would be able to capture these things better, but like we still can't. So that's why I think there's like a if there is something paranormal and like spirits trapped, they're just on a frequency that none of our technology's capturing.
I think your best option of ever catching any evidence of a ghost or spirit, if you believe in them, is going to be through
Is a
voice
bottle from like Zelda?
recorders. That too.
yep, it's gonna go next time. All right, so here's my plan. If you ever go on a ghost hunt, which I really want to do, I'm gonna take my little Zelda bottle, and the second I see one of those orbs or like a little face, I'm gonna charge it and just
Yep, just capture it in there.
pop a cork in that, pop a cork, and be like, got myself a ghost in the bottle.
They can move through walls, but they can't move through bottles.
Let me ask this question. This is
Listen.
something we've talked about on our other shows. If we showed up with a Ouija board, Josh, you in?
Not at my house.
No. At this place, Ouija board
If
it
it's
up.
at your place, yes, because you can have that wandering spirit that's like, you know
No,
what?
we're gonna take a
kinda
weekend
like this
trip up to
place.
Pere Cheney. I got a sweet old Ouija
my
board.
God.
I
I'm gonna
don't
plop
know.
it down in the middle of the cemetery, light some candles. Let's talk to the spirits. You in?
I don't know if I would necessarily do it in an area that's supposedly haunted by a super powerful witch.
Especially since knowing my luck, I'd get the wandering demon that's like, oh look, these guys, we're gonna get these. I like
I
these
think-
guys. Let's talk to them.
I think I'm gonna ask that question for every show. If we showed up with a Ouija board, are you talking to them? That's
What if
that's
we
like a
showed up
factor
with
of how believable you think this story's gonna be.
We need to all dress up as Waluigi.
The Waluigi board.
Waluigi doing our Waluigi doing. I can't even say it. Waluigi doing the Ouija board. So let's see. I think
So there was another story I was reading that was linked off of the Astonishing Legend stuff of a group of like people when they were younger kids, like they stole the witch's headstone and they got freaked out because they couldn't brake or gas anymore, like their things were stuck, and they ended up finding out like part of the headstone like slid and broke and got underneath, and they thought it was just completely like bad karma and that the witch was like getting them from like a different perspective of making them pay for stealing basically her and what like her name and everything, and that they returned it. Like that kind of like I know back then like they probably didn't like play into it like we do now, but like if I knew that was a witch's headstone, I ain't fucking touching it. I will look at it, but I am
I'm not
definitely
stealing
not
any
stealing.
headstone.
Well, 100%.
I would do the whole like just walk on my camera and be like, witch's head. Neat. Wrong way. Neat. Take a photo. Done.
Or take a selfie with it. Just
Take a selfie with it. Have a witch's face in the background going. Bleh. Be like, okay, I'm done. Nope.
and then you just retire from everything.
I'm done. Just turn everything off. Go home.
Your camera
Put on
combust.
At that point, I would have my safety, downstairs, the lights off, playing on 24/7. Some people get the tinfoil hat. I got the anti-demon blanket. So I kind of add to that story because I heard it too, and they do a very good job of the guy who calls in or does an interview for the podcast does a really good job of retelling. Essentially, what happens is that it's actually for the same guy who told the story about the kids who saw the two red eyes. They end up going back to the graveyard a few weeks later, and it's just the two of them. It's this guy and his best friend, They go and they take a piece of this which supposed witch's headstone, and he puts it. The friend puts it underneath the front seat of his car. So one time during the Michigan winter, and since we're all Michiganders, we understand snowstorms can come out of nowhere and they can be pretty intense, especially when you're that far north.
Yeah, because the
So
lakes are
apparently,
closer to the land up there.
Hmm.
right. So basically, what happened is that there's a sudden random snowstorm. Like they're driving along the freeway, and the snowstorm comes out of nowhere. They're like, there's literally no other place that the snowstorm was happening except for right here. And what ends up happening is that the friend loses control of his car, and they crash into a tree. And this is back in like the '60s, so car safety isn't what it is now. If you want to see how bad car safety was in the '60s, '70s, just watch some crash footage. It's pretty bad. So they end up getting a head-on collision, lose control of the car. And so when the car gets towed back to the friend's house, they're kind of going through and checking the car for belongings and stuff. And that's when they find that the piece of headstone had hopped over most cars have that adjuster bar at the bottom. It kind of was holding the brick in. Well, it hopped up over the adjuster bar, landed itself square on the braking gas, and that prevented them from being able to drive the car. And they're associating that with the crash. So naturally they returned the stone and kind of said, yeah, sorry about that. Here you go, just leave me alone, please. And I haven't had any issues since. So it's stuff like that where it's not necessary. I mean, there's so many other factors that can go into why that happened. First and foremost, it's before automatic brakes and people are driving on snow, and you don't know how, if they're drunk or what the deal was, or if it's just poor driving experience. But there's just that little bit of like a little bit of spookiness to kind of tie it back to Pere Cheney, and kind of why just another ghost story, and I think it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So who wants to read this story off before we talk about our opinions and stuff like that?
The long-winded italics one.
Yes.
Okay, I can read it off.
All right.
So this is kind of reiterates everything we've been talking previous. If you ask any random Grayling resident, they might tell you the witch of Pere Cheney, a cemetery. I've heard nothing about a witch while researching the town's history. There are a few gravestones left in there. Most have been destroyed by delinquents drinking. In fact, there's a story about a Crawford County sheriff who, as a kid, just desecrated the graves and drove around with the skull in the rear window, like we said before. One of the witch stories has something to do with cursing the town from plagues, or with plagues, and fires after she was banished in the woods. So this story says that the fires weren't started by Grayling's residents, they were started by the witch, trying to get back at the residents for banishing her into the woods. So there's nothing to support this. There's actually nothing to support the Grayling's residents bringing the town down either. Again, it's trying to find any supporting information is very difficult for this topic.
Yeah, I mean, because like,
So
there's so many questions. Like, most of the people who would have answers are obviously, dead.
here's my favorite argument for why there isn't a witch, or even if there was a witch, it's not in the graveyard. Because if you're a bunch of angry townsfolk and you just banish this lady from your town, and because she's a witch and she's doing all this stuff, are you gonna bury her in your graveyard with all the other people? No, you don't want the witch there. You want the witch
Well,
somewhere else.
back then they burned most people who they thought were witches.
Right.
Oh yeah, I mean, there were multiple. So there's like a lot of different things. Some people say that she was hung in the graveyard. They say she's hung in town square and then burned. Like
Right.
they beheaded her at some point. They banished her. Like
Right. All this stuff.
there's no definite source on. And even then, like back then, witches were like the hot
Oh
shit.
yeah, the hot button.
Yeah, like basically, if anything weird happened with a female, or if she was doing something wrong and you wanted to cover it up,
Oh
you just
yeah.
killed him, called him a witch, and killed him.
Yeah, she possessed me. She took control of my body. I lost control, and yeah, we need to get rid of her. I don't know where that kid came from.
Yeah, that's not my child.
That's
Yeah.
not my child. She spawned that. That's a spawn of Satan.
I have blue eyes. That one obviously has green eyes, so it's not mine.
So what do we think
Yeah.
about it? What's our thoughts?
I think it's just maybe the graveyard has something spooky going to it. But mostly I think it's just people, as we said, kind of at the start of the show. It's people going into a graveyard, and graveyards all by themselves already have that eerie, spooky feeling. I think it's just people buying off that and then making, mountains out of molehills. Like, oh, I thought I might have heard something. It was a witch. That's my thoughts on it. Just local legends doing what local legends do best. I heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy who knows a guy who went there and saw this witch lady hanging out in the trees. It's all it's to get the grain of truth that gets turned into just these massive stories that get out of control.
They're fish stories, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just
I caught a
folklore.
fish this
Yeah.
big, but in reality, this fish was this big.
Huge.
This fish is gonna be huge.
So that's my opinion. I think it's just a town that unfortunately, like a lot of early settlement towns, got Mother Nature said, nah, you're done. Bye.
Yeah. I agree with you a lot. I mean, I think almost any cemetery, if you believe in ghosts, is going to be haunted to a certain point because it's just a lot of dead bodies. If it is haunted, I don't think it's as crazy as people say, and I don't think there was a witch involved that put a curse on the town, because if witches existed, more than likely it wasn't a real one.
I'm kind of in that same boat. There's just a lot of weird factors that take place. Like, why was this town like at all like so cursed to begin with? So like from the beginning of this town's like early days, like there was just stuff going on that wasn't good for it, and it just kind of wiped out. Like back then, like that happened. Like when the diseases spread, like they did. I'm sure we could go to. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of other cities or towns in our state alone, let alone through like most of the country we had popularized and, and like renovated to like our standards. I would say not just a bunch of woods, but like going through there, I'm sure there's plenty of towns that are like that. But like just something about this town like had some bad luck and bad juju to begin with, and then over time like things just kind of like racked up from poor hygiene and bad water and all that stuff. And yeah, I agree. Like, there's a lot of people that don't believe the witch stories because, again, like we don't have the answers. But I like how you said it, Josh. Like, every cemetery is going to have stuff going on if you believe in that aspect of it. Because like a lot of people don't believe, but they like to read these things and do their own stuff. But like
most people are skeptics on it.
Yeah, because like we've never really had like solid concrete evidence to prove one way or another. And that's just kind of like how you were raised or how you believe in life, like what happens. But I mean, like stuff happens, and again, like you get that heightened sense of fear and panic, and you want to believe you heard something or that you've seen something or that any of that, and it adds up. So like maybe there is something going on, but it's a heightened level because of what you're wanting to see and experience. And a lot of people in every aspect of like ghosts and spirits and stuff, like they deal with that. So I do think that like something's up with this town/land to begin with, but I don't think it's I think it's over embellished.
I can agree with that. It's like the tulpa theory. If you give something enough energy, it's going to manifest. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it has nothing to do with what actually happened or what's originally there, but because so many people have given this thought or this idea energy, that it manifests itself. And this is how we get ghost stories. It's if you so it's kind of like if you go looking for trouble, you're gonna find it. So if enough people go looking for the certain thing, it's might just have enough energy to manifest itself.
Again, the only thing that I can't truly explain is the dude with the shotgun, and
Right.
nobody can. Like that's the biggest thing that gets me is obviously like there's proof that people vandalize, but that's all. That's the one thing that points me back to like thinking something is definitely up. Is like what happened that night exactly, and who was this guy?
How many like old white dudes in their 50s drive a truck? Do you think there are in
All of
the Brading
them.
area?
All
All
Like-
of them.
I mean, let's be real here. I'm pretty sure that you just described a good like 80% of the population up there. Assuming that you go through, I mean, maybe that percentage is higher if you go through like permanent residents, not just the people that go through like tourist wise. So I'm not surprised. I mean, and you could just there's so many people that fit that description and live out in that area that it'd be, I guess, because I could see why there'd be difficulties. However, the point you made earlier, Alex, which is why is it only that one time in 2009? I mean, it's almost 10 years later, and if we haven't had that since, and there's been a bunch of people out there
And
close to
it didn't
midnight
happen
and late.
before either. Like no reports of it
Right.
either. So those are like
I'm
that's
going back to my
that's what I question. Like I don't question a witch because like there's not enough to support it either way, other than like just ghost stories. But like that is almost factual to 100% degree. Why did it happen? What caused it to happen? That's what I want to know more of.
maybe maybe if we can get to the bottom of why that happened, we can get to the bottom of Pere chain. Maybe we finally find the thread that unravels the entire great mystery of what is all this stuff? What happens? Why do all these weird things happen?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, this is like going to be one of our new weekly shows that we're going to do on the channel. The title of this podcast, which will be once we get it all sorted out. I don't know where we're going to upload it to, other than like on Twitch at the moment, but we're working on that. Pitfall Paranormal. Matt, can you explain why we are called Pitfall Paranormal?
because it doesn't matter what topic you research, as soon as you think, "Oh, it's simple. There's nothing. It's a pitfall." You're gonna go down the rabbit hole, and you're gonna find there's way more information than what you expected.
It's a great name. I love it.
So with
And
that,
it's alliteration, and it sounds nice.
so with that said, what are we going to talk about next week, boys?
I don't know. I
Um,
don't think we really.
Playing
Haven't
it
gotten
out.
that far.
Just trying to like
I-
tease something. I don't know. I know in a few weeks, like with the new full moon cycle and stuff, we want to talk about werewolves again.
Yeah. I also do want to call out. Detroit Underground Juice Collective has a Pere Cheney juice that I've been vaping on, as well as their whole collection are haunted places in Michigan. So they have juices called Henderson Castle, Paulding Light, Jewett House, Calumet Theater, Presque Isle. They have River Raisin, they have Felt Mansion, Eloise, and Denton Road. Like those are all flavors and all haunted places in Michigan. And I think it's really cool.
And that's kind of the theme that I want to keep for this Twitch podcast talking format. Is I'd like to kind of stick things to the Midwest, because I don't see too much. I mean, you see some stuff for Chicago, obviously, because Chicago has a lot of history to it, but you don't really see. I struggle to find stuff that happens about Michigan. I find stuff that kind of struggle to find things that happen to the Midwest.
Well,
I'm
there's
a Midwesterner.
there's a decent stuff that happens in Michigan or folklore legends, and then there's also places like Virginia, which is pretty deep. With
Yeah,
it,
that's
too.
only where like
Oh,
the
man.
American population starts.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, yes.
So we'll find some more topics to dive into. I would say keep up to date on our social media. We'll announce some stuff probably.
So
Twitter,
speaking of
Facebook.
that,
Sure.
so we won't have something to just like to name now, but our goal is to kind of plan some things out so like we can obviously let you guys know. But to close it out, Josh, why don't you take Matt through our closing notes?
Oh, Matt.
Oh boy.
Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Beards and Beards, Twitter at Beards and Beards 9. What else do we legitly have? YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, which we should upload this to YouTube, and we should eventually start extracting audio files and putting that shit on iTunes.
That's part of the plan. Is like I'm gonna put this on YouTube at the time that we're allowed to. And
Throw
then
it on iTunes. Now, on iTunes, should we do it? It should be Pitfall Paranormal. This is Matt's thing. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Beer Advocate. Check out what Alex has been drinking. Hit us up on that I haven't done this in so long. I don't
You're out of
remember anymore.
practice, Josh. It's okay.
I forgot now.
This is all new to me, so I'm like, yeah, great. Okay, cool. Yeah.
That one job site,
LinkedIn.
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 Add us on your LinkedIn. We'll be your professional reference. We'll tell them how good you do the thing.
Don't know what the thing is, but damn it, you do it well.
You do it so damn good. Check us out on NatureBox, naturebox.com/skippy454 for 95% off your next order. That's
These are
not
things
true.
that obviously won't. I mean, maybe.
We're not a sponsored podcast. We don't make any money.
We're an award-winning podcast that ain't won no goddamn award.
We've won 16 Emmys, 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, and a Streamies. And finally, check us out on MySpace. Matt, what's our song of the week?
Song of the week? Oh boy. Is there some restrictions to this? Because I kind of have one in mind.
I think we're saying no to the horse cock.
That's not what I had in mind. However, I think I sent it to Alex earlier, so I'm gonna resend it. We're gonna do the Queen's High C song from the Divinity 2 soundtrack.
Perfect.
Well, all right then. So that was that's the show. Thanks for coming out. Check us out again
Thank you,
next
everyone.
week. The Sunday shows will be returning very soon once I'm done hunting. Until next time. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.